Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited because I have Shari Spiro on the line. Say hello, Shari.
Hey, Eduardo.
Hi, and if you don't know, Shari is the founder and CEO of both AdMagic and Breaking Games, and I have a lot of questions for you. To just jump in, can you sort of I like to do an origin story, how you got into doing all this. So I'm pretty sure AdMagic came before Breaking Games. How did you get into how did you start into the whole board game scene?
Well, I was in the ad specialties business, hence the name Ad Magic in the beginning. And we used to make all kinds of strange things, and all kinds of different materials, steel, metal, magnets. We even had a little jingle song. I was going to bring it with me today, play it for you. And it had all these crazy things we could make, everything from clothing to imprinted toilet paper. I mean, you name it, right?
And so these are things that a company would put their brand on or their logo in volume, right? Like I want keychains or I want stickers or that kind of printing.
Yeah, exactly. The T-shirt you're wearing. I mean, it could be anything. I used to tell people I'd walk into a place and I'd go, I can make that, I can make that, I can make that. That type of thing. It was fun, and I really liked that business. Except I like the manufacturing, but I didn't like the nature of the clients in that business because they were mostly corporates in a hurry who were all about if you were high by a penny. That was your value and you didn't get
Right.
the job. And it just, I didn't feel there was any loyalty. There wasn't really client development where, you develop a relationship with the client and you stay with them a long time, except for a rare few.
Right.
And so I was doing that. And I love the printing part of it. And I had actually started in a printing company where my father-in-law owned it, and we made credit cards. So it was kind of a cool way to start. Sheet-fed vinyl. We had three unions in there. We had a screen printers union, we had an offset printers union, and then we had a union up in the camera department.
And
So we had
is this a
three
factory in the
unions.
States?
This was a factory in Hillside, New Jersey.
Oh, all
It
right.
was enormous, enormous. I must have been 400,000 square feet.
So
And
you
it
are
had
like,
4 floors.
like uh, uh, raised, born. You're a print person. I mean, you've gone through all these sorts of different manufacturing leading up to AdMagic and learning how that whole side of the business, right?
Yeah, I started in a factory. So what happened was I was probably, I want to say I was maybe 30. I don't remember my exact age. And I got the job because I had been doing temp jobs. I had a baby and it's hard to work, to get a
Sure.
full-time job. And so my father-in-law said, I don't want to hire you because I don't want to be accused of nepotism. So I'm going to test you. Right. So I'm like,
Sure.
okay. So he tests me. And they bring me in, they do all kinds of psychological testing, and then they do, they do testing for, see what my math abilities are. And
Sure.
it's like going to school. So they do this whole battery of tests, and he brings me and he goes, well, you've done really well on the test. We're going to hire you. And I'm like, yay. And I go in, and I'm low man on the totem pole. I'm
Right.
answering the phones. I'm the receptionist, right? Everybody hates me. They don't even know me. They hate me because, they don't know what I'm going to be like, right?
Sure.
So then I work my way up from receptionist and I go to customer service. And so I'm learning about all the manufacturing. So I would have to run into the plant to find out what the status of a job was.
Sure.
So I'm going onto the floor and I'm meeting with the pressman. And of course, I was this young girl and there was a lot of older guys that were like union printers. And they were happy to teach me everything they knew, because it was like, gosh, young girl, I get to talk to her and explain it to her. It's funny. So I learned a lot about lamination and heat and how heat affects
Sure.
sheet-fed vinyl, and about hot stamping and what makes a good die for a good hot stamp. And, just like a lot of basic stuff you would never learn. I learned all about the finishing department, how to die cut in different shapes and different materials, the difference between when you want to use silk screening and offset printing, and then the different materials that you could use for those. Giant credit card. We made these giant silk screen credit cards. We made millions of little credit cards. We did hologram application. I mean, it was just, we had a camera department. We had,
So really just
the art department.
the nuts and bolts of printing, right?
Yeah, and I was just like the customer service person. I worked my way up, and then eventually I was running customer service. And when the company actually went out of business, I was in charge of all the jobs that were on the floor. So there was like a lot of work on the floor, and I had to move it. I had to get them finished because even though the company went out of business, the jobs had to get finished.
Right.
Clients hanging, most of them hadn't fully paid. So what we did was I made an arrangement with the group that took over, and they said, "Can you get the jobs finished?" And I said, "Yeah, I can get the jobs finished." So I made deals with different factories to finish the jobs. That's basically how I started this part of the business. And then, so I wound up being an ad specialties person, doing printing. Right. And then one day I printed some playing cards, and the playing cards came across my desk, and I thought, wow, what could be easier than a rectangle? It's just I had no idea what I was getting into. What could be easier than a rectangle? So for a long time, we just did playing cards.
Right.
And I rebuilt my site to be a playing card site. And it got really high in Google. And so, when the guys from Cards Against Humanity Googled custom playing cards, that's how they found me.
Right. When I look at AdMagic, on my radar, that's when you guys blew up with Cards Against Humanity. Is that true, or that's just when I noticed? Is that really where you guys in the game space? Well,
that's when I really walked into this space, because I had been in this other, world, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And so then when I went to my first PAX, I was just like, oh, this is my job. This is
it's totally different
fun.
Vibe.
I can laugh, and, there's games. I'm going to be playing games all the time. And these guys they were hysterical. Cards Against Humanity is just, they're some of the funniest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
So just being able to laugh as part of my job and, make this incredible game, it was really a blessing, because, I loved the printing part of what I did, but I didn't like the clients. And then I wound up with the great clients. They're just great people. And that was how I entered the space.
Well, yeah, I think the people in games are awesome as well. And I have to say, when you were going through all the nuts and bolts little pieces of learning all the parts of printing, that's an area like where, as a small indie developer, publisher, you always want to have somebody that understands all of that, right? Understands the difference between this type of quality and this type of quality, and what the give and takes. And so in video games, I came up through QA. So coming up through QA was an area where I had all that ingrained knowledge. But in manufacturing and board games, it's just sort of you try to look at comparisons, but I can never have an articulate conversation. So one day I'm going to get an internship in a factory and learn some stuff about printing. But so you do Cards Against Humanity, but you're still AdMagic at that time. You haven't made this leap into Breaking Games. What was that transition about? How did you then say, you know what, I want to sort of be a publisher instead of just being a printer? What was that thought process?
So what actually happened was, I did Tabletop Deathmatch. Remember that? And that was like, yep, that threw me right in the middle of, learning so many things about games that it was fascinating. And then Max Temkin actually said to me in a conversation, I remember I was parked on the side of the road talking to him, because I usually try to pull over when I talk.
Very good. Very good.
Yes, I just like to put that out there. I pull over when I talk. And he said to me, there's really a space for somebody like you, to help indie developers. And so my initial focus was to help indie developers print their games. But then what happened was these indie developers were getting stuck with games. They would print their games, then the games would just sit in their garage. So I said, well, I'm going to go to Gen Con to try to get more print clients. Why don't you bring your games with us to Gen Con, and we'll all share my booth, and you guys can sell your games. So I brought, 5 or 6 designers with me the first year, and they set their games up on a table, and everybody sold their games. I don't even think we had a central sales portal at that point. I think just
everyone
people
just sell whatever they sell.
They just collected their own money. Yeah. They were able to come, and we helped to move some. I remember there was a U-Haul or something. We have a box truck, so I think we might have had the box truck. Just a lot of manual moving. I remember that first year I was in storage spaces for people, physically helping them load their stuff onto trucks, and
you're describing a real problem,
people.
Right? A lot of indie. You're describing a real problem. A lot of indie developers, for one reason or another, on their first game, they print too many, or they think distribution's going to pick them up and they don't, or they don't have a partnership, and this garage full of game problem is a real problem. So,
and a garage is a really bad place to store games too. People have them in their trunks, and then I'll never forget this one client. I don't remember the name of them, but I wouldn't say anyway, but they called me up. They had been storing the games in their trunk and they were wondering why they were starting to fall apart. And I'm like, how long have they been in the trunk and where do you live? Arizona? I was like, wait a minute, you can't, the glue's going to melt. Everything's going to disintegrate. So it was kind of funny. So we started paying attention to where people were shipping their games, because I said, guys, you can't ship it to your garage. It's not a good idea. Yeah. Unless it's a climate controlled garage, you're going to put it in your house. That's fine, But once we make the games, we don't want them to put it in a place that's not semi-temperature controlled because they'll get destroyed. And so I guess my first one that I really got involved with, well, there were a lot of them in the beginning, but the one that really put me over the edge was Poop, because I was at Boston Fig, and I was showing my games, that I'd printed, and Poop was laying on the table, and about 20 different people came up and said, hey, can I buy that game? And I'm like, yeah, I can give you the email address of the designer and you can email him and he'll sell it to you, right? So like 20 addresses later, I called Blaze up and I said, Blaze, I think maybe I should be publishing Poop. And he said, what does that mean? And I said, I really have no idea. All I know is that people want to buy it and I'm tired of giving out your email address. So we should probably, come up with some sort of an arrangement. So he and I came up with, it was my first publishing arrangement, my first publishing deal. And I said to him, I really don't know what I'm doing, right? And he said, yeah, I know. We'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. So I had no idea what I was doing. I had hired Aaron DeMarc, and I said to him, so the first year, we don't know what we're doing. You just got to tell everybody, we're going to do our best, but this is our first year. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to go to trade shows, but we really don't know what we're doing, right? So we screwed up a couple of things, nothing major, like little, like retail, how to deal with certain retail people, like certain distributors and things. So I think we had a couple of distributors aggravated. And so that was the first year. By the third year...
You're storming through everything. So one thing, just a couple of things to add, because just to add some color to the conversation in terms of my experience of working with you and interacting with you, I've always been impressed, and I see it a lot in the startup business, not as much necessarily in the board game business, but I see it there as well, where you've always struck me as somebody who's very much about, like, let's do it. Like, the logistics don't stop you from saying you want to do something, right? The sort of, how's it going to happen? What's it going to be? You absolutely do all that stuff, but that initial, like, let's do it initiative is through the roof. And I remember all of this happening, and I remember that booth when they were all just standing there, all doing their own thing, and and we had talked about a game or two here or there, but it was always sort of like, sure, how's it going to work? And it's sort of, and I think it's been really fun to watch that attitude, because again, a lot of other publishers who are in the space or locked down in the space are much more like, no, here's the process, here's what it is, and they're off-putting, where generally speaking, I feel like you're very positive and momentum driven versus, again, that sort of like, no, here's the format, here's the approach, here are the restrictions. That's not possible. But okay, so anyway, so your first year, you don't know what you're doing.
Well, I'd like to expand upon that a little bit. So my new blog is my new blog post is about trying to mix being an entrepreneur, which is what I technically am, because entrepreneurs have that. Come on, let's do it. We have no idea what we're doing. Let's go do it. Right. And that's what made me a good match for Cards Against Humanity, because they would say, okay, we need you to get some bullshit, and it needs to be bullshit, not cow shit. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be bullshit, not cow shit.
So I'm going to
have to verify that somehow, right? And be like on board for doing crazy stuff, right? So you have to have that mindset, before you get involved with that, because otherwise you're going to be intimidated.
If
you're going
to
say, how am I going
to package a razor with our game, how are we going to do that, right?
That's the only thing we're not going to do, So we don't want to condone shaving. Absolutely not. We don't want to condone shaving. We believe in facial hair. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying. You got to have that go get 'em attitude, and I do still have that. I am finding, though, that, as the organization becomes a real organization and there are more people involved, that I have to step into the role of a CEO more than the entrepreneur, So I have to mix it. I mean, I have to be both because I still do my entrepreneur job for all my clients. I'm still doing, how do we make it? What are we going to make? Oh my God, that's crazy. How are we going to do that? Like we've got crazy stuff coming out now. So that has not stopped. The organizational part of it, though, forces me to do things like have regular meetings,
talk to people.
Well, I always talk to them. I mean, I always go around to everybody and talk to them because that's my thing. I want to I want to make sure everybody's got what they need. But, it's just a little bit more structured. And I think that's what happens. A lot of the publishers that you're talking about, they're very structured. They have a very clear path to where they want to go. Now, on one side of our business, on our strategy side, we have a very clear path. Rise of Tribes was a very deliberate move on our part. Yes. Because Rise of Tribes is it not only did it bring us amazing credibility, which I don't know that we need credibility more than we need a good game, but it's a nice thing to have, credibility
Sure.
and a good game.
Well, go ahead.
Well, you know what I'm saying. It's the company that made Poop, right? Well, Poop is a great game, but sometimes if you're a strategy player and you're playing a lot of big strategy games, you're going to like Poop, so to speak. So, but you see Rise of Tribes, and then you say, "Oh, okay, this is a real company."
And it's transitioning. Yeah, it's less perhaps a real company as it is a hobby board game manufacturer or publisher, right? You're sort of, because you've been mass market, right? You've made.
Well, we're doing both. We can't stop. Like Sparkle Kitty, I thank you for putting that up there. Sparkle Kitty's mass market. There's no doubt about it, but it's also a crossover strategy game. So my goal is really just to make games that I can play. You know what I'm saying? It's my kind of player is a player who may not be able to devote 3 hours or 10 years to master a game. I want to be able to get into the game right away, and then I want to get better at it every time I play it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think those are some great games.
Yeah.
And okay, so just in that sort of advice category and thinking through the business, talking about being an entrepreneur, but this transition, this small, scrappy to sort of more formal business growth, where you're bringing on a team, you can't just run off in every direction all the time. You got to bring the herd with you, and you have all those things that change. As somebody who's transitioned, right, or is in the process of transitioning your business or in growing it, what kind of advice would you give to people to be smart about that? What have you sort of learned as you've done it? Because I guess, I mean, you've clearly been a growing business for some time, but perhaps it was more one. Why is the growth now requiring more hands off from you and more letting your team blossom versus when AdMagic was blowing up with Cards Against Humanity? What's the difference?
The difference is that I've surrounded myself with people that really love what they do, and I love working with them. So that's the key. Like, you really have to find the right people, and you can't push that. Sometimes people would say to me, we need another person. And I would say, you know what? When the time is right, we'll get another person. But we can't just get another person for the sake of, getting another person. You can't do it. And it's almost like it's not an organic growth exactly, but it's as close to an organic as you can have, right? Because as things change, people come in. And once people start working for me, they very rarely stop. So I mean, that's a pretty good thing. You want people to stay, because if they don't stay, they're not accomplishing their dream. Because people's dreams are not to work for me. Okay, I mean, I may be a great employer, but they didn't start out in this life going, oh, when I go into the workforce, I want to work for Shari Spiro, because that is really my goal in life, right? It doesn't work that way. They may say,
interesting way of thinking of it.
They may say, they may want to work with me now because I've done some cool stuff, and they want to, know a little bit more about that and learn some things, and that's fine. But the truth is, that's not enough. Once you get to know me and you pass that whole thing, then what? So you have to have a reason for working, right? So your reason for working is to make games that you develop and then to take them into the marketplace. And then maybe somebody else like Peter, who is not ever going to finish What the Food, maybe when he hears me say that, he'll finish it.
You keep him pretty busy.
Yeah, he keeps himself busy. That's the whole thing. He's given parameters and he can choose how busy he wants to be. But the truth is, he loves what he does.
Right.
So he's driven like I am. I mean, we're
Right.
just all driven from inside because we have this great opportunity to do all this great stuff.
Right.
So let's do it while we can, and that's kind of where it's at. You got to do it while you can. I mean, I traveled for 3 years because I'm like, hey, I can do it. Let's do it now.
Well, and actually, just it's sort of non sequitur a little bit, but one of the things I believe, and this is my impression from Peter, which may or may not be accurate, is that you've sort of started to pull back from as many trade shows as you were going
Me
to.
personally,
You
yes.
personally. Is that
Yes.
part of giving them more space, or part of you just wanting a better quality of life and not traveling around the country?
Well, so part of it was I have to pay attention to systems in the business. Okay, that's my job. That's what I mean about transitioning a little to be more of a CEO and less of an entrepreneur. But I'm still going to maintain both, but a little bit more attention to the CEO part because we have some pretty interesting, things that are happening that require more systems attention. Like, we're in Target. That's a big system. We're handling it in-house. Most people job that out. We don't. We do everything in-house. I mean, we closed on a warehouse building in January. But we had been in there since last July. So we've got this like 30,000 square foot, and we've got the 15,000 square foot warehouse that holds probably like 800, 900 pallets, right? So we've got an enormous space. And we needed that once we got involved with mass market the way we did.
Right.
Because we have to handle the relabeling, and there's a lot that goes on when you go into mass. So those systems require attention, and we're not stopping. Now we're in Barnes & Noble, and we're going to go into Walmart. And, more things are happening, more deals are coming up, different kinds. Now that I know mass market, it's kind of hard to stop.
Sure.
I want to go meet the people at Bed Bath & Beyond. Let's some cool Bed Bath & Beyond game in there. You know what I mean? It's non-traditional marketing. Let's take one, you got a gem game, let's put it in a jewelry store. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, I mean, I'm all about I don't believe that games have to be sold only through your friendly local game store, right? Still a really important focus of our business. Matter of fact, that's another thing that requires a lot of attention now.
Sure.
We have to grow.
Those guys have lots of demands, yeah.
We have to grow that sector. So
just to the extent you're comfortable saying, and for everyone listening, that's a traditional phone, or is that your cell phone?
No, that's my cell phone.
Oh, okay.
It's got the special ring.
Yeah. I was like, wow. No. How big is AdMagic, like staffing wise? Like, how big of a company is that when you think of all those pieces?
Well, so AdMagic and Breaking Games share staff.
Okay.
That's very important. We don't run completely separate operations, except at the warehouse and print and play. So we have, print and play, and then we have the warehouse, then we have headquarters. So
together.
There are in headquarters and the warehouse, I want to say there's between 22 and 25 people because we have, now we have workers that come in just to do warehouse jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's that. And then in print and play, I think he's got, there's like 3 full-timers, but I think he's got like 14 people that he rotates out there. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. I haven't really micromanaged print and play, but we're going to put a lot of attention on print and play soon. Right. Because there's a lot of things that Andrew needs that I haven't had time to give him. I've given him machines and stuff, but systems-wise, he needs a better system. We need a better website on print and play.
Yeah, sure.
I want a website on print and play that is so easy that you upload your files, and then those same files can be used for mass production. So if you go from print and play to China, files are ready.
Right. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yes, that was my whole goal to begin with. But these things take a lot of time.
Sure, and that's a superpower that you have that, say, a game crafter doesn't, right? Because they can only sort of their end line is at print versus print and play sort of scale versus saying, no, if you do your prototypes, get it ready, and then hit the button, and when you say you want 5,000 copies, we'll get you them from China, and they'll be this super cheap price or whatever. So that's pretty powerful.
The main reason I got involved with Andrew, and the reason why we wound up owning print and play was because I wanted that straight line to production. But I also realized that you need the prototypes. And Game Crafter, I love their work, but Game Crafter uses a different kind of file system. So when I was getting their files, I was having to convert color. Sure. And I was running into problems. And I said, we need to control this from the beginning. And it's been a lot better.
Yeah, oh, and for sure, whenever whoever I use for just getting prototypes done, there's always a second process to say, okay, now we're going to go manufacture it. Now we have to do the files this way, set them up differently, over again. So okay, so you talked about, so you said about 24, 25, and then 15, and then did that include the sort of Breaking Great Games crew, or is that another bundle of people?
So, well, Breaking Games isn't in that mix, right? But then we also have Peter and Astrid, and he's got another helper in California. So we have offices in California now. Well, we've had them in Burbank. Couldn't think of the name of the town. And we just expanded Peter's office, by the way. He's got a new play space. Where are you located?
I'm up in the Bay Area, so he's
That's
down.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got a new playroom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's
awesome.
got a big
like
room
for play testing and playing games.
for
And stuff?
games to have groups of people in,
Oh,
like
very
like
cool.
a whole game night.
Yeah,
So, yeah, believe me, if I could afford a bigger place in Burbank or in LA, I'd get it. But prices are so expensive out
for
there.
Sure.
It's crazy. So we're just renting a little office, and then we were lucky that another little office opened up, and so the two of them combined is quite a nice sized space.
Well, and so I mean, you're a pretty big operation when it comes to not the grand scheme of the world, but when it comes to the board game space. I mean, that's up there with larger publishers, and obviously it's because you're spanning all of these different parts of the market. I mean, you almost have a vertical stack. You're just about there.
Well, we are now with the warehouse, and we're there because we have the warehouse. So what else is there? So here's how it goes. You come up with a game. You come to me. We prototype it. You're ready to go. You kickstart it. You kickstart it, not me. I don't want to. It was fun though. It was fun doing Rise of Tribes, but it takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time, but that was an excellent. Chris and Peter did a really good job on that with you guys.
And I didn't even add in Chris, right? And then we have two guys in Mexico that are our branding and illustration team, Wes and Marshall. I don't know if you ever met them. They come to shows once in a while too.
I might have.
You might have met Wes,
right.
and he loves it, right? So he's an illustrator from outside the industry. He does all our corporate branding, basically.
Okay.
The look of the company, the look of the trade show signs, all of that stuff, our ads, the little static cling things you see at conventions. He does all of that, and he loves it too. So he and I, whenever he sends me art, that's like Christmas morning. Every time I open an email from Wes, it's like Christmas morning. I'm like, oh, what art's going to be in here today, So that's my love, and it carries over.
Right, and so you're giving this list. So the Kickstarter's done, and then you move to manufacturing, and then you guys take it through. And so do you use distributors, hobby distributors?
So here's what we do. So Luke Crane, very smart man from Kickstarter. Sure. When I was first getting into publishing, I said, so what do I do? I mean, what channels do I go through? And he said, you go through all of them. All of them. Don't limit yourself. And I'm like, okay, So initially I thought it was going to be, okay, you make the game and put it in distribution, but that's really not how it works because not every game is right for distribution. So some go into distribution. So we have Games in Alliance. Some go into stores. So they go into Target or Barnes & Noble. Some go on to special online retailers that we trust. Some go to Australia. Some go to the UK. Now we're getting, some go to Canada. Now we're getting more heavily involved in Germany. So I'm going to Germany. I'm going to Essen, and
first time you're going to be at Essen?
No, I think it's my third time.
Okay.
But we're developing some strategic partnerships over in Germany, and then I'm even looking at manufacturing. I've been doing some test manufacturing over in Europe because we want to start to localize, and we may be even working a little bit with Asmodee. I mean, we're just trying a little bit of everything. It depends on what's right for the game. So I don't have a really strict formula for distribution because each game is different. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, Herbaceous. I mean, how many health food stores did you get in touch with? That's who I'd be called. I'd be like, health food stores, yeah. So I'm all about looking at it and saying, okay, well, where can we put it?
Right.
Where can we put it? Who's right for it? And then we open that channel. Right. And sometimes it takes a year to open that channel.
Right.
Sometimes you could track down a buyer for a year, and then they'll be like, yeah, and then sometimes it takes a couple of months or somebody's directed to you through a client. A client will say, hey, Game of Phones brought us a lot of clients because they would say, hey, so-and-so's interested in our game. They contacted us. They'll bring them to us because we're their publisher.
Right.
But they're still indie. but
Yeah.
they're still indie.
Yeah,
So it's a different. Some of our people aren't indie; they don't want to control their own game.
right,
Some
right.
people are. So
And so, all right. So I think people listening, it'll be fascinating to sort of see the sort of expanse and different places that you're operating in, and how you're taking on again that whole stack, the whole vertical. Which again, lots. I had a great interview with Scott from Renegade Games, and they're growing, but they're still you know just working on sort of more traditional channels and localization and expanding in different places, but more in that traditional publishing. But since you guys have the manufacturing wing and the desire to drive into online or direct to retail or new channels and that whole conversation, it's this expansive thing. So my question for you is, where are you going? Like, what do you? In some ways, it seems like your branding is becoming stronger and more clear. But when you think of your company, in 5 years, where do you want to be? How's it moving, or is it just watch and see?
Yeah, we just want to keep pushing Hasbro off the shelves and making more room for the cool games. I mean, that's really it. It's not that I have a personal vendetta against Hasbro. It's just that it's just that we have to have a goal, right? So our goal is to.
But that's a real goal.
Really,
I mean, that's a very specific answer.
Yeah, it's a real goal. I don't know if that's really the right answer. The right answer is really that, I joke about it because, Hasbro's the big boy, right? It's like Big Brother, right? And you want the indies to come through. The people with the really clever ideas that, never really make that much money from a behemoth. If you've got a behemoth, a really, really big company, they can only afford to pay, small royalties to designers. You know what I'm saying? So even if you've got a multi-million selling game, while you're probably doing pretty well, it's still questionable whether or not you're full-time into making games, right? I mean, I don't know the answer to that, how many of the guys are. I think some of the guys with the really big games are full-time, I know, and they make enough money off of those sales. But we try to support a middle tier so that smaller designers can still, do what they want to do, which is full-time design. And maybe it's a little bit idealistic. So far, it's been pretty good, because we are expanding. But I am a little bit of an idealist when it comes to certain things, and that's where I have to temper my idealism. Sometimes you have to. I mean, I'm still saving Kickstarters. I had committed to saving a couple of people who were, just brutally going to fail. They were never going to deliver their game. And I have my last rescue, I'm calling it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want to put that on a game.
No, don't tell me that.
I'm on my last rescue because I'm telling you right now, I'm not doing any more rescues. But, I rescued a few games. That felt good, but it also taught me that I have to really educate people. They have to know before they go in. There's a lot of dangers. Things can go wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, not to name anybody, but just right now, there's a Kickstarter from a weathered dude, and I reviewed their games in the past and assisted in the past. And at this point, they went on their own, and that was not that I own it, but just sort of like they didn't ask me for my opinion along the way, and they don't have to. But then it's floundering, and I looked at the page and I was like, hey man, you want some feedback because all this is sort of not up to snuff anymore. And you just sort of just came into this thinking like you could do whatever and expect to win, and you really haven't. And I think people, you can't be, it's hard every time. It never gets easy. So
it's a challenge. Kickstarter was my biggest fear. And that's why, the first Kickstarter was going to be the expansion for Letter Tycoon, and that just didn't happen. There was a lot of reasons why it didn't. And so then we decided to do Rise of Tribes instead. And those guys, the amount of work it's crazy. And then just even in the morning, I used to say cha-ching, cha-ching, because you see the things coming in on your iPad every morning. You see a whole bunch of, payments coming, right? And I said, even that was overwhelming. I took a picture of it and posted about it because I don't think people normally see that. I mean, unless you're the name behind the Kickstarter, you don't get to see that.
The constant emails.
Constant emails where somebody just paid $66 and $70. And for me, it wasn't that overwhelming because I know that I'm going to be able to manufacture the game. But for somebody who's got somebody else who says, yeah, I'm going to take care of it for you, and it's not them, that has to be daunting.
Yeah. It is, and so you've already you're starting to elbow Hasbro already, right? You have every time I go to Target, you have more real estate, right? I've seen
Right now we have a ton of real estate there. Right now
and
there's an end cap and
and
two shelves.
and you have that thing, the Cards Against Humanity thing with I don't know, the old guy saying I'm the sponsor. I don't know what that ad campaign's about, but I'm sure the Cards Against Humanity guys know what that's about. But I just read that and I was like, I don't get it, and I just kept on walking. But
Yeah, that's it. I don't think you're supposed to get it. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
yeah, it's weird. But so awesome. And so I guess for people listening, presumably as a publisher, just because a lot of the people who watch these videos are some industry folk, but a lot of Kickstarter creators getting in. Are you just open to solicitations? Like, how do you approach new indie, creators who want Breaking Games attention? What do you usually expect to see? What's the avenue?
Well, we have a submissions process. So the guys out in California usually take the submissions and test the game. Sometimes people give them to me, and then I do have an entire back office conference room. I have like a whole wall full of prototypes from people, which I still go through. I every couple of days I'll go look through it and make sure that I've tested something or gotten back to somebody.
Not falling too far behind.
It's overwhelming, but we do have a process now, and we're getting booked out like other companies are. We've got a lot going on, but we still have that flexibility where if something falls in our lap and we want to make it, we can make it. Peter found one a couple of weeks ago he just fell in love with and he wanted it, and I was like, how bad do you want it? He said, I really want it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Because I trust
that's it. The sort of let's do it. Whatever. We'll figure it out later.
Look at Sparkle Kitty, man. That thing came out really fast.
Yeah.
Sparkle Kitty beat a lot of games out because it's almost like games have a life of their own. They're like songs, and if they're produced the right way, they're going to be a hit.
Right.
And some songs are just, filler songs, Some songs, what I mean?
Well, I felt that way about Herbaceous in that a lot of games take a lot of time to develop and play and manufacture, but with Herbaceous, it was like the art was there, I saw it, it was from Beth, it was gorgeous, and I was like, let's get a game, and then I approached Steve with it, and he was interested, and he designed it in like, I don't want to understate it, but like maybe a month, maybe two, like he just sort of put it together,
wow.
And it worked, and then I had like a delay on another Kickstarter, so like I then put it in a Kickstarter slot. So like it's sort of, I think from like concept to execution was maybe 3-4 months, maybe 5. I'd have to look again, but it was compared to something like Liftoff, which was years, right? Like,
right.
And fortunately, or like it's both exciting and depressing. It's my best-selling game, right? Like so, it's sort of like it doesn't necessarily pay to put all that effort in, but anyway. But it's
no. See that's a dilemma. That's a dilemma you as a designer are always going to face, right? But when it's that easy, you're so lucky. You know what I mean? You're so lucky because it's a great game, and like you said, there was no pain. You know,
the no pain part is the nice part.
No pain of that.
But it also takes. Part of that is the experience you get from doing games and doing previous ones and knowing, right? The fact that I had these people I could collaborate with, put it together, get it to a Kickstarter, then get it into manufacturing very quickly. Like those are all things you're not going to be able to do if it's your first Kickstarter, right? So it's a combination of skills and opportunity. But anyway, we're at about 38 minutes, so it's been a nice long chat. I feel like I'm always in a little awe at how much you guys are doing over at Breaking Games and AdMagic and the sort of scope of it all. But it's pretty awesome, and I definitely, speaking for all indie, appreciate you guys still sort of wanting to put the indie game on the shelf with other stuff too, but keeping it that sort of fresh and new, not just, hey, here's an IP, here's a game we can put with the IP, pump it out type of approach that, and nothing wrong with it. Not to say there's anything wrong with what Hasbro's doing, but not that mass market big brand, traditional.
Like I said, I was joking about them only because they're the ones to attack, right? Because they're the big,
who else are you gonna run after?
Who else am I gonna, pick on? But look, some of their IP is great, and that's why it sells millions and millions and millions and millions of pieces. So, there's a reason why things are evergreen. And I guess, just if you want a way to kind of finish up, what we're looking for as a publisher is an evergreen game.
Sure.
You know, something that is going to be around for a long, long time. And if we can't figure out a way to make it evergreen, or we can't figure out a way to sell it, in the end, we're only going to walk away grudgingly. Do you know what I'm saying? Or give it to somebody else, because we really want to make them work. But, you know, in the end, the ones that are meant to be, like herbaceous, you know, will be.
Yeah.
If they have a life of their own, they really do.
They do.
They sound corny, but I've watched it happen over and over again.
For sure, for sure. Well, Shari, thanks for being on. Hopefully this was interesting. It was certainly interesting for me, so I always hope that means
Interesting for me, too.
But thanks, and thanks everyone for watching. Bye.
Bye.